By the way, my brother announced, striking his glass so hard the stem nearly cracked, we've decided you won't be hosting Thanksgiving anymore. You're too controlling. And honestly, my husband chimed in, tapping his spotless plate like a judge delivering a verdict, your cooking isn't anyone's favorite. A thin ripple of laughter broke across the table, quiet but sharp enough to sting. Even the cranberry sauce seemed to hold its breath. My kids stared at me, their eyes wide with questions they couldn't yet ask. The home I had scrubbed and polished suddenly felt more like a lobby where I wasn't welcome. So I cleared my throat. My name is Mariel. My hands smell of rosemary and caramelized sugar. I make silence taste warm. I set tables with care, season meals by listening, and still believe food can mend people too proud to say they're sorry. I stood at the head of the table, before the spread I had poured myself into, turkey wrapped in buttered lettuce, sourdough stuffing jeweled with apricots, gravy that shimmered as it cooled, pies winking under sugar crusts. It wasn't just food. It was a map. A blueprint of how I'd tried, yet again, to make family feel like home, for everyone, even those who arrived starving for something nameless. My brother licked silence like frosting, savoring his stage. Greg, my husband, leaned back with the smugness of someone who thought he had orchestrated it all. His hand squeezed my shoulder, play along. Appreciate the update, I said softly. My voice was a napkin folded neatly over a sharp blade. My children scanned my face, bracing for sparks. I gave them steadiness instead, flavored with cloves, heavy with restraint. Chairs shifted. Someone coughed for attention. My mother-in-law reached for pecan pie she didn't even like. I gathered plates and smiles, both heavy in my hands. In the kitchen, steam fogged the window until the outside blurred to watercolor. I rinsed pans, letting the warm water undo knots inside me. Greg's words circled back, controlling. Nobody likes your food. But the hiss of the faucet reminded me, who stocked groceries when his card failed? Who signed the checks, held the permits, built the catering business where strangers lined up for meals that felt like holidays any night of the week? Me. Mariel. Later, my brother called, his voice dipped in mockery. You're not upset, are you? No, I said, drying my hands. Not upset. I touched the serving tray. The metal thrummed like a vow. I was done offering seconds to people who spat out the first. I refilled water glasses, kissed my daughter's hairline, and let the room believe I was pliant. Grateful. Small. The turkey timer chimed, a single silver note. My brother raised his glass again, eager to crown himself host for next year. Greg smirked, his favorite expression. I smiled wider than both of them and placed the carving knife down. The blade caught the chandelier's light, throwing it across the ceiling like a secret signal only I could read. Some dinners close with coffee. This one ended with silence, patience, and a promise cooling into something unbreakable. That night, I lay awake beside Greg's whiskey-soured snoring. His words, "Nobody likes your food," clung to the corners like cobwebs. My children's worried faces hovered in the dark. I pressed my palm to my chest. My heartbeat was slow, steady. Mine. Not theirs to vote away. By morning, the dishes were still piled. Greg sauntered into the kitchen as if surveying conquered territory. One day, you'll thank me, he said. Now you can relax. You were too serious about this anyway. I slid him a mug of coffee. My lips curved. My silence burned. He mistook it for surrender. His first mistake. Weeks passed. I kept moving, packing lunches, running the catering company, balancing late-night books. But beneath the routine, a steady hum built, like a pot left simmering. They thought they'd stripped away my stage. They never understood, Thanksgiving wasn't applause for me. It was my classroom, my workshop, my stage for something larger. I wasn't just cooking meals. I was building connections, with clients, with strangers who respected me, with communities that leaned on me. And when I wasn't feeding others, I began feeding myself. I wrote menus, partnered with farmers, taught my daughter to knead dough, let my son stir until flour dusted the counter like snow. Their laughter was medicine. Then, one icy January evening, the phone rang. My brother's voice crackled through, sharp but softened by desperation. "Mariel, we messed up. Mom's party, we need your help. No one else can pull it off." In the background, Greg shouted, "Ask again. Tell her we'll pay." I leaned against the counter, staring at my reflection in the dark window. My kids sat at the table, pencils scratching, eyes flicking to me. They already knew the answer. I let silence stretch, like dough under a damp cloth. Then, with a voice smooth as polished steel, I said, "Now you're hungry." And for the first time. The call buzzed in my hand, vibrating with the weight of their desperation. "It's Mom's 70th, Mariel," my brother stammered, his voice cracking around the edges. "Everyone's coming. We can't risk it falling apart. Please." I could picture his face, jaw clenched, pride split open. For years he'd thrived on being the sun, forcing everyone else to orbit him. But without me, the table was just empty space. Then Greg's voice cut in from the background, sharp as glass. "Tell her we'll pay double. She owes us, at least that much." Owes? The word pulsed in my ear like an insult. Across the room, my children froze mid-homework, pencils hovering. Their eyes held one question: will you give in? I turned away, whispering to the quiet instead. Funny how crowns slip when the feast crumbles. "Mariel," my brother pressed, his tone inching toward panic. "Are you still there?" I let the silence stretch until it nearly snapped. Then finally. "I remember what you said at Thanksgiving." He let out a jagged breath. "It was a joke. We were tired. You're the only one who can do this." I closed my eyes, seeing again the steam-filled kitchen, my hands raw from chopping, their laughter cutting into me like knives. The memory had hardened into steel. "I'll consider it," I said, my voice calm but edged. "But it's on my terms. My menu. My price. My rules." The quiet that followed tasted like his surrender. Finally, "Fine." I ended the call before Greg could shout another command into the receiver. My hands shook, not with fear, but with the thrill of reclaiming what they thought they had stripped away. At the table, my daughter whispered, "Mom, are you going to help them?" I kissed her head and said softly, "Sometimes people need hunger to remember who feeds them." Outside, branches rattled against the glass like applause. In that sound, my plan began to rise, slow, deliberate, unstoppable. The weeks before my mother's birthday became a parade of apologies. Texts at midnight: "Can we meet? We'll cover every cost. Please confirm." Even Greg, who hadn't dared meet my eyes since Thanksgiving, slid an envelope across the counter one evening. "Advance payment," he muttered. I counted the bills under the kitchen light. Said nothing. The silence unsettled him more than anger ever could. My children became my quiet allies. They saw the recipe cards scattered across the table, the sauces simmering at odd hours, the calls I ignored. They knew this wasn't about food. It was about control. "Mom," my son asked as I kneaded dough, "are you cooking for them?" "Yes," I said, folding the dough with steady hands. "But this time, it's not for family. It's for a lesson." The air filled with roasted garlic, cinnamon, and resolve. I built dishes that smiled on the surface but spoke truths underneath, sweetness masking heat, beauty hiding sharpness. Every plate a mirror. The night of the party, I arrived at the hall early. Tables gleamed, silver catching chandelier light. My brother paced, tie askew, sweat at his hairline. Greg leaned in the corner, drink already in hand. "You're late," my brother snapped. I smiled, lowering trays heavy with their dependence. "No. I'm exactly on time." Guests trickled in, admiring the spread. Praise murmured across the room. The same family who had dismissed me now watched strangers celebrate me. My brother's smile tightened. Greg tried to claim credit between slurred boasts. My wife, well, soon-to-be ex, she's always been handy in the kitchen. But eyes slid past him and landed on me. During a toast, my mother pulled me close. "You've outdone yourself, Mariel," she whispered, her hand warm on mine. For a flicker of a second, I felt the approval I had chased for years. But the memory of her silence at Thanksgiving curdled it in my chest. When dessert arrived, the room fell into hush. I unveiled the towering cake, jeweled with sugared fruit. Gasps rippled. My brother leaned in, jaw tight. "You'll get your money. Just don't embarrass us." I pressed the knife into the frosting, the blade gleaming. "Embarrassment is earned," I murmured. Slice by slice, I served them. They ate, they cheered, they applauded. They didn't taste the restraint baked into every bite. But I did. And so did my children, smiling proudly from their corner table, watching as I fed the room and kept the power in my hands. Their mother never needed to raise her voice to command attention. By the time the applause swelled that night, my brother's face had turned crimson with defeat. Greg stumbled out into the cold, ignored. And me? I stood straighter than ever, knowing the true course had not yet been served. That moment was still waiting. The evening closed with handshakes, scraped clean plates, and whispered congratulations. I packed deliberately, savoring the quiet that followed chaos, as if the kitchen itself was exhaling. My brother lingered nearby, gratitude sour on his lips. "You saved us," he muttered. I slipped off my gloves, folding them neatly. "No," I replied evenly. "I saved myself. You just got to benefit." Greg staggered back in, tie crooked, cheeks flushed with drink. His sneer slurred. "You think this changes anything? You're still nothing without us. Don't forget who gave you your place." The irony almost made me laugh. "Greg, you've confused being fed with being powerful," I said softly. "That's your second mistake." Then my mother approached, cane tapping against the polished floor. Her eyes, an unsettled tide of pride and guilt, flicked between us. "Mariel," she said, "your food brought everyone together tonight. Maybe we judged you unfairly." I searched her face. There was truth in her words, but not enough. Apologies offered out of fear never carried weight. I gathered my things, my children slipping their hands into mine. Outside, winter air stung sharp against my cheeks. Snowflakes drifted under the lamps, crowning me in silver. "Mom," my daughter whispered, "does this mean they'll be nice now?" I knelt until my gaze met hers. "Sweetheart, people don't change because you feed them. But we change. We learn who they are, and we stop letting them take more than they deserve." Behind me, applause still leaked from the hall. To them, it was celebration. To me, it was a curtain falling on a play I had rewritten in silence. The final act still waited, patient in the shadows. 2 days later, the envelope of cash sat unopened on my table. My children watched as I slid it into a drawer. "We're not doing this for their money," I told them. "We're doing it so they remember." That evening, the calls began. My brother's voice cracked with panic. "Mariel, people keep asking for your number. They want to hire you, for catering, events, everything." We didn't plan for that." I smiled into the phone, calm. "Maybe you should have thought of that before you pushed me out." Greg's voice barked from the background, bitter. "She can't manage without us. She needs the family's name." But the truth drowned him out. Within a week, I had more contracts than ever. My reputation spread not by blood but by strangers' praise, each compliment louder than their old laughter. My brother tried to worm into credit. Greg tried to charm clients who ignored him. Their desperation soured fast, like fruit left too long in the sun. Meanwhile, my children and I built something sturdy, ours alone. Nights filled with the hum of ovens, the scrawl of recipes, the sound of my children's laughter in a kitchen that had become our fortress. One evening, as I tucked my daughter in, she whispered, "Mom, I like when they need you." I brushed back her hair. "It's not about them needing me, love. It's about us not needing them." And with that, the silence in our home no longer felt heavy. It felt alive. The family thought exile would break me. In truth, it freed me, and freedom, I realized, was the sharpest knife of all. Spring bloomed, petals pressing against the glass. Orders stacked, events sold out, my name passed from client to client. Respect, gratitude, trust, these became my true kin. Then one bright morning, my brother's number lit my phone. I let it ring until silence returned. A message followed, "We can't do Thanksgiving without you. Please." I remembered that night, the mockery, the smirks, the laughter that made my children shrink. I had only smiled then, saying, "Thanks for letting me know." They thought they had stripped me of my place. Instead, they had delivered me my freedom. That November, when leaves lay brittle and gold, I set a new table. Not in their house, but in a hall rented with my own earnings. 40 guests gathered, not tied by blood, but by respect and belonging. My children carried trays with pride, cheeks flushed, laughter ringing. "Mom," my son asked as we placed the last dish, "is this our Thanksgiving now?" I looked at the glowing faces, the steaming plates, the joy rooted in this room. "Yes," I said, steady and sure. "This is ours. And no one can take it away." Outside, the night stretched endless and soft. Inside, our light burned steady. The family who thought they had silenced me had instead given me the greatest gift, permission to rise without them. Justice, I learned, doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it lives quietly in the sound of your children's laughter around a table you built.